So we had a lot of talk about going tattooless today, but I'm here to talk more from an RTT perspective about how important it is to properly assess your staff training. So first, a quick word to how we use SGRT in Zurich. Not necessarily our tattooless workflow, but how we implemented it. An anonymous survey we sent out to all the RTTs, a workshop we developed based on that survey, and the follow-up survey we sent out. So we've had SGRT in Zurich for about just over 5.5 years. It's standard practice for all breast patients, free breathing and DIBH. We use it for lung and abdominal treatments, including T and L spine, stereotactic and conventionally fractionated. We use it for sarcomas. We just started an open face mask clinical trial, but we really wanted to take an additional step and go tattooless. So we've been tattoo light for about a year, and what that means for us is that for our thorax and abdominal patients, we were still tattooing them at the time of CT, but if they landed on a machine where we have SGRT, we were setting them up with the SGRT. And that's because we have 3 LINACs in our clinic, and only 2 of them are outfitted with an SGRT device. We also have the additional unique situation in our clinic where none of our LINACs have 100% compatibility with any of the other ones. So what we were doing, I think it's a fairly typical workflow. So our RO fills out the planning CT requisition. We fulfill that, including tattoos. The PTV is then defined by our ROs, and then our dosimetrist gets the job of deciding what treatment machine to plan the patient on. Because we have machines that have different images, different energies. We only have one with 18 MV. We have different MLC sizes. Do we need the micro MLCs? Is it stereotactic? Is it conventional? We only have one, as you can see, that's outfitted with the Millennium MLCs. So as soon as your PTV is more than about 22 centimeters, the patient has to go there. And then also, how much time do they need to plan the patient? So they not only set machine, but they also set start date. Is it a single PTV in the lung? Is it 3 PTVs that we're going to treat with one isocenter on a patient that's had previous treatments? How much time do they need to get through it? So this all sounds really complicated, but that being said, even though we're a very small clinic, we do make about 3,000 plans a year. So we thought we would use our experience and this knowledge to make some changes that would enable us to go tattooless. So we use our experience to look now at patient diagnosis and stage, because we can make a really educated guess as to what that plan is going to look like in the end. So we actually, with the help of going to a fairly regimented care path solution, changed our workflow. So now our RO fills out a planning CT requisition. We have a few additional requirements. So is it going to be 3D or modulated? Is the PTV longer than 21 centimeters? And then our booking clerk plans the CT appointment, drags the appropriate care path based on priority given by our ROs and the complexity of the plan. This gives us a start date. And then now with this additional information that we have on the planning CT requisition, we can also assign a treatment machine. So this is really important because it means when a patient comes to planning CT, we already know if the patient is going to be treated on a machine where we have our SGRT. So now we only tattoo the very few patients that we have to schedule on our one machine that doesn't have SGRT. The rest of the planning proceeds as normal, so PTV, plan creation, the patient comes for treatment. This is to say we have a backup plan, but I don't think we need to talk about that. So hopefully you saw the talk from my colleague Ninka earlier. When we introduce something new in our clinic, we do it quite rigorously. When we first got the SGRT, we did a lot of workshops and training and audits on our free breathing and our DIBH system. But we had already done an audit on how to set up tattooless. And like I said, because this was really just the last step where the training wheels were going to finally come off, to implement something like this in our clinic, we would normally just have a meeting with all the RTTs, about 45 minutes, present a couple slides on what we would like to do, have a more of like a round table question and answer period, and when everyone feels comfortable from the RTT side, we would set a go live date. But we decided for this to send out an anonymous survey because maybe people don't want to say in front of the group how they feel. So our survey had 5 questions to do with SGRT, and the first, and an additional question, what you see here, so just a demographics question. And this is to say we have a really, really young staff in Zurich. So 50% of our RTTs are sitting in that 2 to 5 years experience pocket. So lots of energy for new things, but yeah, rather young. So to our survey. So the first question, how competent do I feel setting up patients for the first fraction using only SGRT? This is quite surprising for me because, like I said, we had been pretty much doing this for a year. But when you ask anonymously, only 64% of the staff say that they feel competent or very competent. If you move to the second question, how competent do I feel setting up patients on subsequent fractions using SGRT? We see already a big jump into that competent and very competent section, and I think that comes from we save the table values on the first day. So as of day 2, you already have a position to which approximately get the patient into position where you can turn on the SGRT and you already have reliable deltas to really just fine-tune that position. Third question, how competent do I feel setting up patients using only SGRT within the desired time period? Doesn't really appear to be a problem for us. But the fourth question, so there's been a lot of talk about regions of interest today. How confident am I in my ability to draw an appropriate ROI? Only 64% of our RTTs would gauge their ability as competent or very competent. And the last question, how competent am I in my ability to troubleshoot with SGRT? So this had our lowest response rate with only 57% of the RTTs saying that they feel competent or very competent. So keeping these things in mind, first day setup, ROIs, and troubleshooting, we scheduled our workshop. And so we actually booked both our machines out for an hour each that have an SGRT device. We split our RTT staff up into small groups, and 2 of our dosimetrists were nice enough to come play patient. So we really just gave everyone the opportunity, so put the pendant in their hand and said, this is a first day case, let's do it. So let's look in the Align RT system at approximately where that ISO center is. Let's practice driving the table up with the lasers on to that approximate position, turning the SGRT on, and setting up my patient. We also had everyone take a treatment capture. I can't stress it enough for things that are not in your region of interest to assess arms and chin position. It's also quite helpful. The feedback we got to know what way to rotate the patient with these bigger rotations. You see this -3, but is that left or right? Because it has this nice visual representation. When we start talking about regions of interest, we do have this flip book from Vision RT, and we actually made our own, so translated into German for our clinic, that's in our SOP book. This would be an example of one. So for every region that we treat with SGRT, we have how we would like our clinic standard to have the ROI with very specific rules about what you should include and what you should not include. But I think what was causing people to feel a little less confident is that they didn't really ever have the opportunity to just play without the pressure of having a patient on the table. So I think that was what was most useful from this workshop. So we really just said, okay, our pretend patient is on the table, let's make the ROI too big and see what that does to our frame rate. Let's draw it a little bit too much on the belly and watch how that breathing motion affects and makes it harder for you to set up. Let's make it a little bit too small and I'll turn the gantry and we can see how it influences when one of the cameras are blocked. So really just having this time to play with the ROI. Common troubleshooting things. So like I said, this camera blockage we dealt with. We have this lovely skylight in our bunker, which means we have to be very careful about our lighting situation. So we made it too bright and took a reference capture so you can see how that affects. Sometimes you get these little holes in the ROI, how to reset the camera connection, what to do if the Bluetooth doesn't work with a visual coach, just these little tips and tricks for the things that might happen most commonly in the daily routine. 2 weeks later, we resent out our survey. So first question, how competent do I feel setting up patients for the first fraction using only SGRT? So we've seen a very marked improvement. We've managed to go from 64% to 87% of the RTTs rating themselves as competent or very competent. Subsequent fractions wasn't a problem to begin with, but we've seen that almost the entire staff has now jumped into that very competent bar, which is nice to see. How competent am I in my ability to draw an appropriate ROI? We've gone from 64% now to 80% of the staff feeling competent or very competent. And lastly, with the troubleshooting, not as much as a marked improvement as the two other groups, but we've still managed to go from 57 to 73%. So I think this was a little eye-opening for us. Like I said, we're quite a small clinic. We're only 18 RTTs. But I think we definitely realized that we need to do a more hands-on implementation, even though we have a lot of experience with SGRT. That being said, before we rolled out our open-face mask trial, Vision RT actually came to the clinic and did a refresher training for our staff. And sometimes it just takes time and a little bit of practice. So we actually sent the survey out 4 weeks later, so 3 months after implementation. And now you see troubleshooting is still the lowest, but in all the other areas, we've come up into a nice acceptance and a good feeling of competency, self-reported competency from the RTTs. So, like I said, all in all, additional training is needed even if you have an experienced staff. But that being said, tattooless implementation can be achieved in a very reasonable time frame. And if we can do it in our complicated center, you can definitely make the leap to tattooless even if you don't have SGRT in all your Linux. Thanks, guys.